Thank you so much, Kori-san, for that. And yeah, I think sometimes it's more difficult. Our day generally starts at 9, hence the commotion, because we're only walking in and starting off everything that we do at around 9 a.m. So I'm really excited to be in today's session. Firstly, as you've mentioned, encryption is an extremely important topic. It keeps us safe. It provides the context for our participation in global technological growth, but more than that, it protects us, it protects our data, and it protects our resources along the way. So I'm going to be starting today's session with an introduction to encryption. And for that, I'll be using the Global Encryption Coalition, which is globalencryption.org for those who want to follow online. And sharing the screen. Do I have the rights to share the screen here? Okay, good. Okay, just let me know when you can see the screen.
Yes, we can see the screen.
Okay, great. And let me just check in with my class today to see that they can also see the screen. Guys, are you following the meeting on the Zoom?
Is you able to see the screen?
We can bring that one. Thank you so much. And we will double up in this way. So we're just making sure that our projection is up here ahead of the training. Okay, so we're live. Cool. So guys, I'm going to be speaking into the computer just so that they can hear the audio, but it will come out there and you guys can hear me as well. Okay, cool. So encryption is a very, very diverse topic. And specifically when we talk about it, I think a lot of people don't know yet what is encryption, what does it mean, and why all the hype. So first and foremost, I'll just start off by going through the resources on encryption. So basically, that's what it means. Encryption is the process of scrambling data, information sent online. I think I'm double up here. It's the process of scrambling data.
I think it's too confusing.
Okay. It's and then it's this is the one I'm showing. If there's somebody else's device and it's not on YouTube, they all check it's on mute and they're not actually anyway. Okay, so encryption. Encryption is commonly used to protect data stored on computers and data systems. It's transmitted via networks, including the internet, and mostly we'll find encrypted information around financial transaction, private messaging, private communications, and private distribution of any kind of information. Now, why is it important and why do we think that encryption should be a fundamental human right? The truth is that when data is shared and transmitted across networks, that involves our personal information, that involves our personal data. So, for example, imagine you were texting your significant other about the fact that you too are considering buying a house. And Facebook or Meta or WhatsApp was able to take those informations, read them, share them with, resell them to private sector to understand better your consumer insights, your actions, your desires, your activity online. So that obviously would not be appropriate for consumer protection. But not only that, it also comes to the sense of data privacy. Whatever I send online, whatever I encrypt and send to another person online, still remains my personal information. And so we really advocate for encryption for not only for data integrity, but to increase confidence that people are communicating with a sense of authority and that messages sent are received by the intended individuals and are not read by any other individual. So how does encryption work? For data communicated over networks, encryption takes that data, scrambles it, makes it completely unidentifiable from the original message, and creates a secret value. That value is called a key, a data key, right? And only the recipient and the sender have access to that information which is stored as a key. That key is known only by the data owner. So even the data owner won't know the information that is sent. That is how encryption is supposed to work. The data owner should not know the contents of the message, but that the message should be sent between person A and person B. We're using a secret key that only they can see. So there are a lot of reasons why, as you can imagine, encryption matters. And the first is personal security. It's important that we are actually able to mitigate against internet-based crime, cyber crimes, one of the fastest growing threats, but end-to-end encryption. I think a lot of us might have seen this when using personal communication transformation, communication apps, is that especially when you log onto your WhatsApp device, it will often say end-to-end encryption is being used within this chat. Or you might notice that when you are chatting to someone, every now and again, your secret key might change. That is essentially the key to the information. It's ensuring that whatever information you are sending from as a sender to the receiver remains only the information of between you and that person. Encryption is also important, of course. It's not just going to be at a personal level, consumer level, but it's going to be a national security risk. So with this, we actually note that the use of espionage and in terrorism, hostile environments, exploiting confidential communications of government, states, and other computer systems remains a large threat to overall satisfaction of the establishment of encryption of government and sovereignty. So we want to keep the autonomy, we want to keep encryption safe, and we also want to make sure that the personal and private information of users is maintained and is kept safe. So it's important that we're able to maintain our human rights. It's important that we are able to maintain encryption. Why? Why is encryption important? First and foremost, encryption and data protection and privacy is and should remain a fundamental human right. When human rights are applied to the concept of encryption, we're talking about freedom of expression, freedom of communication, freedom of speech, and then also freedom of my personal information, that whatever I'm sending, whatever I'm creating and producing should remain my own. And so resource implementation around encryption maintains and remains a fundamental human right. It's a digital age, and we know that freedom of speech is extremely difficult and controversial to actually manage within the rise of new technologies, especially with governmental and commercial interests driving the growth of technology, driving the growth of online e-commerce, consumerism through platforms and innovations. But with the rise of innovations, technologies, it's extremely important that we are able to see from a human rights perspective that there is a growing need for greater awareness around encryption. And that is one of the reasons why the Global Encryption Alliance was set up and why we have now established a day, Global Encryption Day, celebrated annually with the idea of having encryption as the core component of realizing towards a free, open, and trustworthy internet where human rights and moral principles or norms are actually acceptable and actually acceptable as the core matter around creating a safer internet that we're all able to use with regard to legal protections, ethnic protections, national protections, local protections, language, religion, origin, and other status. This is information that needs to be protected in order for us to maintain the freedoms of all people. And so when it comes to encryption, we're really talking about a very transformative landscape and one that we need to maintain a regular understanding around. And so on that, I just want to get to the third topic that we're going to be discussing, which is why encryption is under threat. In the changing landscape and with the rise of digital technologies, it becomes much more apparent that human aspects are as important as technology aspects. Okay. So sorry, can I just ask that everyone goes on mute? As human rights aspects are greater exploited, it's more important for us to understand that encryption remains under a huge threat. And the availability and use of technology in particular face significant threat in the rise of information and communications across many countries, where freedom of expression is, which is actually recognized as a human right under Article 19 under the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So it is a human right. And our right to be online is as much our right to that freedom of expression as ever before. And not only this, but freedom of expression is recognized under international human rights law in the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. And basically what that Article 19 of the UDHR, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, states is that everyone shall have the right to hold opinions without inference. And everyone shall have the right to freedom of expression. This right shall include freedom to seek, to be online, to receive, to send and receive messages, and impart, to communicate information and all kinds of ideas, regardless of frontiers, either orally, in writing, or in print, in the form of art, or through any media of their choice. It's extremely important to note the importance of this particular framework when we understand and talk about encryption from this global perspective. There's a variety of different places where encryption should specifically be protected, which is at national level, with level developments in specific countries, as a human rights level within the legal framework related to cryptography and to actually understand the technical elements of imparting knowledge through encryption. And then in media and communication, that media and communication providers should have the right, firstly, they should have the right to publish, whether it's in print, in writing, whether it's by communication, radio, but furthermore, that individuals, the humans the people as a society should have the right to choose our own media, our own information, and we should have the right to impart that information onto others without fear or favor, without threat. And encryption is actually allowing that as an opportunity through end-to-end encryption as a technique that refers to preventing service providers themselves from having access to users' communication. So it really is a very important element for us to understand how encryption actually functions within our society. And you know, there's a variety of different ways that encryption can be under threat. And we have a responsibility to protect against current and future trends with encryption. Current and future cyber trends, such as ransomware, generative AI, quantum computing, all of these lead to an increase in surveillance and are driving the need to secure all data with encryption. I don't know about you guys, but I want to live my life, and I want to live that knowing that I'm not observed. Imagine there was somebody who would have access to your phone and your messages every single time that you wanted to send anything to anybody else. They would have access to that information. That's not okay. There is no situation where that is okay. And the EU is currently placed a bill. The European Union is currently under debate right now where they actually have taken to court communications providers under the guise that going forward, social media companies will not be allowed in the EU unless governments have access to those communications should and when they feel the need is necessary. I don't agree with this particular bill, and I think that Brussels has thought about a lot of things that are relevant for the world. However, the context of that is very uncomfortable. It does not enshrine the principles that are valued in the Human Rights Declaration and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and it's not in line with the global need to secure data, to secure online information, and to provide an access and opportunity to information in a way that is free, fair, unbiased. So on a personal and professional level, our personal lives are completely reliant on technology. And if that reliance on technology has our information sold to private sector, to corporates, to other states, and anybody else that would pay for it, then we are under serious threat. We're under serious threat, our sensitive data is under serious threat, and we lose our right to make decisions. If we've got private sector that is able to access the information that we send amongst each other, we lose our right to make choices when it comes to consumer and other buying choices. Not only that, from credit card numbers, medical records, when you go to the doctor, what you were diagnosed with, what ailments you had, what you complained about, right over to your private messages and intellectual property. All this information would remain unprotected if we do allow the EU to pass this law to say that messages should not be encrypted against states. States are at the base of who they are, money-making endeavors, just as much as private sector is. And without encryption, we lose the risk. We risk losing and exposing ourselves and our most valuable assets to malicious actors who seek to exploit our online actions and online vulnerabilities. So on this topic again, I just want to say, why is encryption under threat? I think it's about understanding what is driving the need for encryption. For us to have a better understanding of this, we need to understand what drove us to the point where we needed encryption. First and foremost, the digital footprint of the globe is expanding. Regarding existing encryption technologies, we are driven by recent advancements in technology, including AI, a change of attitudes towards privacy and security, social media, social online presences, cyber threats and attacks. That is where I'm going to start. Cyber threats and attacks. Hacking, malware, ransomware, these we have all been privy to. There's always a day that comes when our laptop sends us that message to say, malware detected. Or you look at your computer device, whether it's your mobile phone, and you realize that you're being tracked. It happens all the time in daily life. You know, you go online, you're on Google, Google is tracking your analytics, sending you targeted messages, sending you targeted advertisements, sending you targeted information based on your actions, based on your digital activities. This data is calculated, it's added together, it's analyzed, it's tested, and you are then boxed within a framework of information. From that framework of information, there's further attack on you as an individual internet user, as an online user, as a user of the digital space, that you should ransomware, malware, to steal your personal information from right under your nose, from your device. And while defenders against this have gotten better at preventing ransomware attacks, malicious actors, there are always new techniques. Whether it's click here and you could stand a chance to win $1 million, or whether it's information that is bringing itself to the forefront of your device to look like a site that it is not. I use a MacBook Air, and one of the reasons I use this particular device is because I found that the constant attacks of malware against my computer were far too much. Despite my efforts at paying for Avast and having firewalls and other protectors, I really was drawn to the idea that with an Apple device, I wouldn't have the same kind of I wouldn't have the same actions because it's built in. So every single day, my device updates me and lets me know that there's been this number of attacks that I've been protected against. I mean, that's great news. But I also suffer risks on this end of the technological development debate, because I now have a device that is constantly listening to me, that is constantly analyzing my data, that is constantly bringing together the information that I speak about and feeding it back to me as a consumer. And that is breaking my rights, because I did not sign up to be a consumer. And that is the fundamental reason why we need encryption, why we need personal protection of personal information, why we need protection of personal data. So the second point that I'm going to bring up are insider threats. Insider threats are risks that are posed to an organization by the individuals within it. That means the employees, the contractors, stakeholders, or any other person that is authorized to access the organization's system and data. If we're sharing our personal information with governments and states, as proposed by the Brussels proposition that is currently under debate at the moment, how then can we stop harmful actors within that organization from taking our information and using it in a harmful way or any which way they deem fit? So when you have situations where information is not protected, that is when you have an opportunity for data leaks. That is when you have a protection for unintentional leaks or inadvertently sensitive information being shared and distributed with other people. Now, I don't know about you, but right down to my name, I deserve the right to when, with who, and how I share my personal information. It is not granted, it is not a fact, and it is not a commodity that my personal information should be available to anybody. That includes my medical records, that includes my records at Home Affairs, that includes my banking transactions, my banking details, my personal financial and other information. The third point that I'm going to bring up is quantum computing. So we've had cyber threats and attacks, insider threats, and quantum computing. Now, what is quantum computing? First and foremost, even though not many organizations are currently using quantum computing, the trouble comes in that quantum computers are able to perform certain tasks much better and faster than classical computers. And thus a particular concern is that quantum computing could eventually come up with methods to break encryption methods faster than today's computers would be able to protect the current computers. And I had a discussion with, I was on a panel discussion yesterday, and one of the topics that came out from the audience during the Q&A session was that the audience member, a well-known businessman in Cape Town, asked why in today's current landscape, where AI is thriving, do we as a humanity feel the need to maintain control over the AI as opposed to allowing it to run and develop society at a quantum or at an exponential rate for us to see human success? Now, I'm going to stop this conversation right here. And that's what I said to him yesterday. I said, first and foremost, the day we lose our humanity, our human control over computers, what we face as a risk is the fact that as it stands, our society is not equal. And because our societies are not equal, the data online is not equal. The data online is still biased. And the programming that would then run, if we didn't have a human law enforcement, if we didn't have a human regulation to this, would be that the computers would not be able to generate information that is appropriate to our society and that is appropriate to what we have determined as a generative and level ethos. And so as a result of that, we cannot, it is not possible, and it shouldn't be made so today or in future that we allow the tech to run itself. And that's the threat that is posed by quantum computing. Quantum computing poses a threat to society in a sense that it's able to grow and escalate at a faster rate than we as humans are able to keep up with it. And so again, I want to stress, we cannot allow technology to be unregulated. We cannot allow technology to run itself. I'm not too sure if we're all familiar with the most recent, just before ChatGPT was released 9 months ago, because we've been using ChatGPT for 9 months. And if we look at the progress that Chat AI has made in the past 9 months, and we track back the progress that was made by artificial intelligence technologies in previous years, just this at the beginning of the year, there was an artificial intelligence bot that was allowed to create a profile on Twitter. Within the very first post that AI tweeted by itself on Twitter, there were racist remarks, there were marks inciting violence, there were anti-Semitic remarks, there were anti-Islam remarks, and there were anti-Black remarks. And that is the nature of the information that you find online, and why technology's representation of our society cannot be held independent of us as a humanity and what we have decided to be our moral, ethic, ethos, and foundations of how we build our society. So I just want to touch on the topic of generative AI. That will be my fourth point, and the threats to encryption as today, in terms of us understanding what it is that is making encryption important, but then also understanding the threats that are made on this device. I see the audience in DUT. Hi, DUT. We're waving to you from Cape Town, guys. Let's wave. Hey, how do I do this?
Hey,
Yes.
hey. Hi, Thoko. Hi, Cape Town.
Nice to see you. Nice to see you. Okay, let me get into the fourth topic of generative AI. The artificial intelligence algorithm generates new content by learning patterns and relationships within the given data set. I want to explain that again. Artificial intelligence generates content from content that is already available online. Therefore, AI is not able to think and create information on its own unless we were to give it the observation of our society to come up with its own algorithms, which would be a deniance of our fundamental human rights. However, having said that, as much as it is an intelligence, it is very much an artificial intelligence. I think I will now quote the famous philosopher Descartes, who said, "I think, therefore I am. I think, therefore I am." If we add to this matrix a technology service that says, "You think, therefore I am," we would then have the foundational basis for what is today's artificial intelligence technology. It is a generative platform that uses an algorithm of amalgamated data to create informed opinions and to generate content based on those outputs. So what does this mean? It means there are deep, complex mathematical techniques and algorithms, neural networks that require vast data sets in order to encompass the deep learning generative methods that are used. Massive training data sets are used in the production of these AIs, and to train them to generate outputs that closely and as close as possible resemble original human data. AI, in every input request, is learning more and more about society and what it wants to know. With every request output, it is contributing more and more to the shaping of that society. And so within this framework, AI is able to generatively know and develop within itself as an algorithmic framework an understanding of what is it that user wants. Therefore, AI is generatively able to shape the user experience of living bodies. However, AI is not able to generate original human-centered behavior experiences on its own. So, having a look at this framework, we're able to understand and infer then that AI is able to generatively contribute towards social behavior, social programming, social understandings, but is not able to interact and interface at a social level because of the original premise that I brought up. We think, I think, therefore I am. However, there is a huge risk that should personal or corporate data be available and be captured by generative AI systems, which and who would then be able to capture this content from as far back as data allows. To date, there would be predictive models that would be able to determine the changes and methods of society going forward. And again, I say, our society's data does not resemble the true opinion of that society in reality. And so it's very important that we maintain encrypted data through these given data sets, through these given algorithms, that we should not be in a position where technology is the driving force to our social society, because technology is not able to see our social problems. As much as we may want it to, technology does not have feelings. It doesn't have emotions. It is not able to conceptualize forgiveness, love, and other related feeling enterprises. Okay. And then my fifth point, under why is encryption important and under threat at the moment, is surveillance. And I'm not just talking about espionage, spies, terrorism. No, I'm not just talking about that. What we're talking about is an increase in surveillance of our day-to-day activities and practices. Around the world, by governments, by corporates, by other entities, we're seeing a huge change in increased surveillance, right? I was just in Djibouti, and the country was coming out of what we call the period of transition. So what had happened is, because of the conflict that was taking place between Djibouti and Somalia and Ethiopia at the time, there had been parts of Djibouti that had been taken back, right, by Somali. Traditionally, both countries sit on the same ancient land. And I traveled between the ancient lands, and I traveled between what was then Somalia, what was then Somaliland, what was then Djibouti. And in this area, I was no longer able to access the internet because it had been switched off. Of course, I have a device that came from outside the country, and so my device was registered externally, and I was able to use my device to connect to an external server through VPN, and I VPN back to my home country, and that allowed me to use some services. For other services, I had to VPN to the UK so that I could use other services, right? And this is the nature of why we need to protect our environment, because of increased surveillance. If we allow governments, if we allow states, if we allow political actors to tell us what we will think, what we will say, when we will do it, and we allow this sort of dystopian, big brother, all-seeing eye environment to lead our society and to lead our ecosystems, we are not going to develop to the society that we want to see. We will actually rather be seeing a loss in privacy, a loss in personal freedoms, as well as a potential for abuse of power by those in positions of authority. Let it never be negated. Whether personal freedoms are taken into respect or not, humans remain humans. And not everyone has the greater good of society at heart. Power dynamics, political dynamics, alliances, money, weapons, and other resources play huge factors in influencing our societies. So toward the more democratic understanding, we have got to be able to allow these points to be addressed. So just in closing, I want to just highlight those 5 points that I've brought up: cyber threats and attacks, insider threats, quantum computing, increased surveillance, and generative AI. And this is why we need to move towards a greater encryption revolution, and why today's trainings are going to be so important. Thank you so much for the floor. Thank you to everybody. Thanks for my team here in Cape Town. And we are going to hand over to Conrad Lobser, who is from Wish, to take the floor and give us a little bit of further training on encryption.